Big news for gold and silver. I have mentioned numerous times on this channel how I am a big believer in owning physical gold and silver. I've had several different gold companies reach out to me and sponsor the channel over the years, and I have had no shame in promoting it because I think it's something that everybody should own. It's the only form of real money in existence. And now Florida is going to be recognizing the existence of that real money. Because on Tuesday this week, Governor Ron DeSantis here in Florida recognized gold and silver as legal tender in the state, which is going to give Floridians a path to use it to buy and sell goods in the state of Florida. Bill HB 99 allows government or private entities, such as businesses, to voluntarily accept gold and silver as a form of debt payment. The bill also outlines sales tax exemptions on the purchase of precious metals if they meet purity requirements or if the sale of gold and silver exceeds $500, which in many cases today it's going to. If the Florida legislature ratifies this bill, it will go into law and effect on July 1st of 2026. Utah also has this same recognition of gold and silver being legal tender in their state. But there is only one part of this bill that I'm a little bit suspicious about, and we'll get into some of the benefits of having gold and silver become legal tender. But this is the part I'm not extremely thrilled about. It says that gold coins must have 99.5% purity and silver coins must have a 99.9% purity to be recognized as legal tender, and the coins also must be stamped with their weight and purity according to the bill. That means something like a gold eagle wouldn't qualify under the current bill, because when you look at a gold eagle, it's composed of 0.9167 fine gold, which is also known as 22 karat, and it's not 0.999 fine. Now the gold eagle still does contain 1 troy ounce of gold by weight, but it doesn't meet the purity standards, at least I don't think it does, at 0.9167, because it has to be 0.95 purity. Silver eagles, on the other hand, do meet this requirement because silver eagles contain 0.999 grams of fine silver. And it also leaves out junk silver. You know, a lot of silver stackers collect junk silver, which is any US quarters or dimes that were produced before 1964 were made up of 90% silver. So those also wouldn't qualify as legal tender under this new Florida bill. So I don't know why the standards are so strict, because in my opinion, silver is silver and gold is gold as long as it's real. But since there's a lot of time before this actually might go into law, maybe they will amend that, because it really wouldn't make sense if you have somebody that collects a bunch of gold eagles and then, you know, the purity isn't up to the standard, and that doesn't count. I mean, that's like one of the most common ways people buy physical gold and silver. But I really like that Florida's looking at this as something that needs to be done, because what DeSantis said in his speech is basically that, you know, this is another way for Floridians to hedge their purchasing power against inflation. Because look at the price of gold these days. Look at how much it has gone up. Silver hasn't quite caught up yet, but gold is now sitting at about $3,400 an ounce or so. That's a reflection of inflation. That's investors pouring money into it because it's the only way to preserve wealth right now. And I look at this as, imagine being able to stack up enough gold or silver to buy a car or to buy a house, anything like that. That could be a real use case for saving gold and silver, and you don't have to worry about what the interest rate is or putting it into a CD account, anything like that, because you can be assured that as the government prints more money, that your gold and silver is going to become more valuable, and it's going to have significantly higher purchasing power by the time you need to use it versus what it has right now. And honestly, I would rather get paid in gold and silver for everything I do. You know, if I could choose to get paid in gold and silver versus dollars, I would take that any day of the week. But DeSantis said that Florida stands firmly for freedom, economic self-determination, and resistance to government overreach. But for too long, outdated regulations and unnecessary sales taxes have made it impractical for Floridians to enter the gold and silver market. So this, combined with eliminating or significantly reducing property taxes in the state of Florida, is a massive win for this state, if you ask me. This is equivalent to being the only state open during the pandemic like we were then. So what's the benefit of all this for everybody? Why is this important? Well, let's talk about inflation protection. That's for the most important thing if you ask me. You know, gold and silver has intrinsic value and it cannot be printed by the government or the Fed. That's the number one thing. And unlike fiat currency, the supply is limited. It is not unlimited, like just pressing a number on a computer screen and watch the number of dollars go up by the trillions. You can't do that with gold and silver. And that's why in times of high inflation, people turn to precious metals as a store of value, and that's why you're seeing the price of it climb. Also, there's wealth preservation. Gold and silver have preserved wealth for thousands of years, and they're not dependent on any government or financial system to retain its value. And in case there is some sort of financial collapse or currency devaluation, guess what? You still have your gold and silver. It's still worth money. Gold and silver is also universally accepted as money. All across the world, people recognize gold and silver as money. And in the event if the dollar keeps losing its value like it has been recently, well, guess what's not going to be losing its value and it's still going to be recognized as money worldwide? You got it. Another huge advantage to gold and silver is transacting in privacy. You know, if you use gold and silver to buy something, there's no bank, there's no third-party tracking involved, there's no paper trail of buying something. There's nothing to link you to any purchase. People who enjoy their privacy are going to like that part about it. It also doesn't allow the government to see how much you actually own. If they can just look at your bank accounts and estimate your net worth, if you have a lot of gold and silver, they have no idea that you have that. There's also no counterparty risk. Fiat currencies and digital assets depend on institutions or governments to function, whereas gold and silver are tangible and self-contained, and their value doesn't rely on anyone's promise to pay. That's why the dollar used to mean something, and it became the world's reserve currency, because the dollar used to be tied to gold. That's when we used to have the gold standard. So for every dollar that we would print, we needed to have a certain amount of gold in reserve. And that's why the rest of the world trusted us, and that's why they no longer trust us, because for a long time we have been severed from that gold standard and have been beating up other nations and abusing the power of that global reserve currency, and people have had enough of it. So Americans, you better listen up and you better own some gold and silver, because those dollars are going to continue to become more and more worthless as the years go by. And one of the best ways that gold and silver can be used is for bartering and buying and trading and selling things between people. And that's why I think that they need to amend this bill to include even things like junk silver. So what if it's only 90% silver, and then people can use things like that to buy and sell goods to each other legally? Now, of course, there are some downsides. There's always going to be a downside to everything, and owning gold and silver is no exception. First of all, it's difficult to subdivide, at least when it comes to gold. You know, if you buy a gold eagle today, you know, it's worth $3,400. You can't just, you know, clip a piece off of it and get $100 here and there. You're going to have more smaller denominated gold pieces, and that's where silver comes in my opinion, because silver can be used in much smaller increments, and that's what people like about junk silver, because each coin is only worth a few bucks. Obviously, it's also subject to theft, which is a problem for any type of physical asset that you might own. But I think the positives far outweigh the negatives. And the fact that Florida is going to be recognizing this as legal tender in the near future, I'm excited to see how this is going to be implemented in different areas across the state. You could use this, for example, to save up money for your property tax bill each year, and instead of worrying about how much money you're getting in a CD account or a high yield savings account trying to keep up with inflation for that property tax money, you just save it in gold and silver, and guess what? It's ready whenever you need to spend it, and it's been keeping up or outpacing inflation. This is coming at a good time too, especially since there's so much economic uncertainty. In fact, the CEO confidence from the conference board just plunged at the fastest rate in the last 50 years. Take a look at this chart going all the way back to 2000, and just look how this chart just completely nosedived here. The conference board's measure of CEO confidence, compiled with membership group, the Business Council, fell to 34 in the second quarter versus 60 in the first quarter. And the conference board said it was the largest quarter-over-quarter decline ever recorded, going all the way back to 1976. So CEOs have soured on the economy more in the last 3 months than they ever have since they've been keeping track. Probably the last time it was this bad was going back to the Great Depression, but we don't have that data. But my guess is that's probably the last time it was as bad as now. Now, in all fairness, a lot of CEOs became slightly more optimistic after May 12th once the tariffs on China were reduced. And now that the court system seems to be blocking a lot of the tariffs that Trump is trying to impose, it might change their outlook in the coming days. But the reality is that 82% of CEOs said that economic conditions were worse than they were 6 months ago, versus just 11% who felt that way in the first quarter. 64% of them expect things to worsen in the next 6 months, against 15% who felt that way previously. So this is basically consumer sentiment for the bigwig CEOs, and it completely dropped. And these guys are usually the most bullish on the economy than just about everybody, because in most cases their job is all but guaranteed. Even if they get fired or resign, they walk away with huge severance packages and stock options and all kinds of things. They don't go home broke, guys. These guys are going to be wealthy forever. So if they're not feeling good about the economy, what does that tell you about the average person right now? Well, we know how CVS is feeling about things, because CVS just announced that they're going to be closing 271 stores by the end of this year. And CVS already closed over 900 stores between 2022 and 2024. I remember reporting on this back when that happened. And now you're talking an extra 271 stores, guys. So that's, 1,200 stores almost closed in the last 3 or 4 years. How many people lose their jobs when something like that happens? They're saying the reasons for the closures are population shifts, consumer buying patterns, store and pharmacy density, and pharmacy care access, and community health needs. None of this mentions the economy, theft, or poor sales conditions in any of the stores. Like, why do they got to make stuff up? In fact, the company insisted that the closures were not due to industry pressures that have caused trouble for other retailers around the country. Okay, whatever you say. I don't know who paid them to say that. But if you live in Alabama, California, Florida, Georgia, Illinois, Massachusetts, Michigan, Missouri, New York, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, or Virginia, you're likely to see a CVS near you close down in the near future. Wow, what a coincidence. You guys hear that? That sounds like the ice cream truck to me. And this is a huge coincidence, because I was just about to say that the next business that's going to be closing down is an ice cream shop. Take a look. There's the ice cream truck. Now, honestly, that ice cream truck looked pretty creepy and a lot more predatory than the ice cream trucks I used to see growing up. But anyways, the ice cream store, Thrifty Ice Cream, they're going to be closing 500 locations, guys. 500 stores. So you're telling me the economy is so bad people aren't eating ice cream anymore? That would be a small, simple pleasure that a lot of people would still indulge, especially now that summer's around the corner and it's getting hot. And guess what? This is a business that came about during the Great Depression. Thrifty Ice Cream opened up in 1929 and started off as a drugstore with a soda shop in Los Angeles. They purchased their first plant in West Hollywood in 1940 and began selling ice cream a few years later. And back in 1948, they won gold medals at the Los Angeles County Fair for how good their ice cream was. So now apparently it's not good enough anymore, since they're closing down. You'll still be able to buy the ice cream in certain stores like Rite Aid and Albertsons and Vons, if those don't all close down too, like CVS. But as of right now, you can find it in those stores across California and Arizona. But things are so bad, not even ice cream parlors can make it right now. And in my opinion, that's just yet another reason to own gold and silver, to protect your own self and to protect your own future from the unknown. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if you're going to be next to lose your job or your business goes under. But at least if you have an asset that's retaining its value, then that's going to be worth something. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. And if you're excited about this, like I am, when it comes to gold and silver being used as legal tender here in Florida, let me know in the comments. Check out this video on the screen if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, and I'll see you in the next one.